All right, let's move on to joint enterprise, our main story tonight. It's a law which allows several people to be prosecuted for a crime, even though they may have played different roles. But campaigners say that's leading to miscarriages of justice. It was used to convict 3 teenagers for the murder of Gary Newlove, you might remember. The father of 3 who was kicked to death outside his home in 2007, and it was the subject of a powerful Jimmy McGovern drama last year. Now today, top judges are looking at whether one of the key tests for joint enterprise, and that is the role of the second party and the amount of knowledge they had for the crime, was that it was going to be committed. We can speak to Joseph Kotrie-Monson, who's director of Mary Monson Solicitors, on this one. Hi there, Joseph.
Good evening, Simon.
Hello. So the big test today, and this is what the Supreme Court are looking at, is this element of foreknowledge, isn't it? Knowing beforehand what might have happened.
That's right. One of the applicants, or the appellants in this case, Amin Jogi's case, will be heard by the Supreme Court. And the question in that case, Simon, is whether his knowledge of the mere possibility of murder was enough to implicate him for something else, for something that somebody else did, not whether he thought it was probable. That might sound like a small distinction, and in fact it probably is, because there are many people who say that this is an area of law that is in dire need of reform, and not just in respect of this very narrow question. Simon, we're looking at an area of law that's 300 years old. I think the earliest documented use of it is 2 horses and carriages racing each other with the effect that a bystander was killed, which has somehow recently, comparatively recently, evolved into something that sends dozens of boys and young men, mostly black, to prison for decades each time at our expense. And there's no question that sentencing in these cases is a really blunt instrument. You've got the main offender who actually did the deed, who receives a sentence of life with a minimum recommendation of usually 25 to 30 years. But you have other parties who get convicted who may have encouraged that person with their presence or some type of distant support, who are equally guilty of murder in the eyes of the law and who receive sentences that are almost as high as that amount.
Okay. What about the driver of a getaway car?
Well, that person could be guilty of that. That person could be, and you could have somebody.
But aren't they complicit in a murder that can't take place unless you have someone to whisk you away?
Absolutely, and I think the question is proportionality. Like I said, joint enterprise. The sentencing is such a blunt instrument. Yeah. When you're talking about 30 years for the main offender and then 25 years for 5 or 6 other young boys who, with the best will of the world, and irrespective of, and with full knowledge and full respect to the fact that these have catastrophic effects on people's lives. Any murder has a catastrophic effect on the lives of the victim's family. And of course, I understand that. But, the reality is that there should be some type of legal discretion between the different roles, and currently really it doesn't exist to an appropriate extent.
Sure. I mean, perhaps you're right to say the sentencing is a blunt instrument, but the judges' hands are tied there, aren't they? Because they it's a mandatory life sentence, and in fact I think that was one of the deals that was done in a way when we got rid of the death penalty, that it would be mandatory life sentence.
Well, that's right, but actually these especially long life sentences of minimum 25 years for murder involving a knife, 30 years involving a gun. Of course, guns are much more serious. But these types of sentences only came out, it's important to remember, in 2003. What's happened is the Labour government, when it brought out the Criminal Justice Act, they took away the discretion from the parole board. So the progress that somebody can make from immature, angry young man to someone who could actually have a chance of contributing to society, whether they deserve to or not. As a taxpayer, I'm not particularly keen on the idea of at 50 grand a year, keeping that person in prison for 30 years without the chance of redemption, only for them to get out in time for them to retire.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense, especially when you're talking with these fringe people who weren't necessarily even directly involved, who didn't have any specific intent themselves, only knowledge of the possibility of murder. Well, it must be wrong.
Let's listen to one of the campaigners who says the law needs to change on that very point. This is Rachel Whitehead.
We've got women who haven't left their house who are serving mandatory life sentences because someone else across the road, their 2 sons, one woman, her sons are involved in a fight across the road and she's doing a mandatory life sentence. We've got a woman in a bath upstairs when her husband's shot downstairs and she's serving a mandatory life sentence. So it's not about gangs. Ostensibly, it might have been brought in to tackle gang crime, but if you give the CPS and the police a sledgehammer like this, that means the legal threshold is so low that anybody can be brought into something as heinous as a murder charge, and it just can be mobile phone evidence, it can be that they've done a YouTube evidence, and these are evidential things that are used in court to say, well, he must have known what he was going to do, or she must have known what she was going to do because of this evidence. And it's a nonsense. Joint enterprise is absolutely nonsense. And when you explain it to the common people, they do not agree with it. They do not expect people to go to prison for life for something they have not done.
Rachel Whitehead there. But what about the old expression, Joseph, that, the company you keep says a lot about you? That, I when I was a younger teenager, had I come into contact with anybody who was carrying knives or maybe even likely to do that or carry some sort of crime out using a knife, I would have extricated myself from that person and that situation and that gang.
Simon, it's very persuasive, but I suspect, with the greatest of respect to you, that was probably more of a reflection on your parents and on your background than the fact that you were somehow a particularly upstanding character outside that environment. These kids are coming from very difficult backgrounds, single-parent families, in areas that we probably didn't grow up in, and of course, I'm not saying that we should be absolving people of responsibility, but should somebody go to prison for 25 years for being there at the scene of a murder rather than actually doing it? I'm not saying that there shouldn't be penalties. Of course there should be penalties, but we had a more appropriate and proportionate response to sentencing pre-2003, and what we're creating is a time bomb of zombies, hundreds and possibly even thousands of people within 20 years who are going to be doing life sentences at our expense, who are going to come out unable to contribute to society. That's not the kind of world I want to live in, Simon.
Joseph, great to talk to you as ever. Thanks a lot for your time today. That's Joseph Kotrie-Monson, Director of Mary Monson Solicitors.